Shut up, Jessie. Okay, so this is about like, I mean, it's the worst day of my life, but it's also like, it's like collective. It's like a bunch of worst days all in one. And it takes place in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm from. And it's called, It's Fun to Stay at the YMCA. The summer after high school, I applied for a job at the YMCA. They needed someone to work the front desk from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. So, Irene, who handled PR, said, as she scanned the clipboard for my name, Graham, why do you want to work at the YMCA? Like most people who work in HR, Irene was only subhuman. Her cold, brown eyes had a dead-like quality to them, as though she were looking at but not actually seeing you. And she always spoke in a monotone that made it impossible to tell what she was really thinking or feeling. On her desk was a framed photograph of a cat dressed in a top hat and a bow tie. It was the only personal item in Irene's otherwise dark office, and the only indication that maybe, behind those zombie eyes, there was an actual human being. Because it's fun to stay at the YMCA, I replied with a smile, hoping to crack Irene's hard exterior, but she seemed all but amused, her dead eyes remaining totally impassive. I'd later learned that it was nothing personal. This was simply how she was, completely devoid of any personality, sense of humor, or redeeming qualities whatsoever. But at the time, I took it as a sign that the interview wasn't going well. She jotted something down on her clipboard, then after a few more questions, said she'd be in touch. I figured that meant I didn't get the job. So you can imagine my surprise when 3 days later she called to offer a lukewarm congratulations on passing my criminal background check. Then she offered me the position. It paid $7.25 an hour, and I was scheduled to start the following week once I completed new employee orientation. The orientation entailed going into the Y on a Saturday and sitting through an hour-long training video. Irene, dressed in a fuzzy blue sweatshirt covered in cat hair, showed me upstairs to a chilly gray conference room where an antique TV VCR set was chained and double padlocked to a metal cart. Have a seat, she instructed. Then she popped a cassette into the VCR and said to find her when it was over. The training video was styled like a news program. As soon as the tape started, the words, "Breaking News," flashed across the screen in giant blinking letters, followed by a man's booming voice saying, "Live from the YMCA newsroom," as if such a place even existed. Then a blonde, stiff-haired anchor woman with shoulder pads and red plastic earrings appeared on screen. "This just in," she announced. "Now that you've been hired to work at the YMCA, your life is going to change." Then she proceeded to list all the reasons why working the front desk of the YMCA was the most important, life-affirming job in the whole entire world. "Working at the YMCA is the rent you pay for being alive," she explained. I couldn't help but wonder about all the people who didn't work at the YMCA and how they paid their rent for being alive. "It is an experience that you will carry with you forever and ever." I found this highly unlikely. When I think of life-changing experiences a person will carry with them, not just forever, but forever and ever, I think of things like witnessing a live birth, or meeting the President of the United States, not folding towels down in the local YMCA at 5 o'clock in the morning. After finishing the video, I found Irene and she presented me with my uniform, a YMCA lanyard, and a name tag. "Welcome to the YMCA family," she said in a voice so grim it sent a chill through me. I dislike when businesses refer to their employees as family. It creeps me out. Paired with the weird training video, being told I was now part of the YMCA family made me feel like I was entering into a cult. Now all I needed to do was be taken to the leader, who I would no doubt be forced to have sex with in order to prove my loyalty to the group. Creepiness aside, I didn't much mind the job. Some of my responsibilities included sitting at the front desk, smiling, scanning member cards, answering phones, occasionally photocopying a fitness class schedule or putting together a new member packet, and making sure the complimentary coffee station was kept clean and orderly. Every now and then I would hand out a Band-Aid or disinfect a basketball. From 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., I did all this by myself. Then at 8 a.m., Joy arrived and we worked together. Joy was a bubbly, brown-haired woman in her mid-40s who had worked at the YMCA for 18 years. She was in the middle of a messy divorce, and one of those people who masked her true emotions by acting psychotically animated all the time. Her favorite thing to say was, "It is a beautiful day at the YMCA!" But every now and again, her facade would crack by way of a sudden, unprovoked mood swing. One minute she'd be wishing you a good morning from the top of her lungs. "Good morning!" And the next she'd be excusing herself to the bathroom to cry. "Is everything okay?" I asked when she returned one time. "Everything's fine," she replied with a painted-on smile. "Everything's perfectly fine." A single tear rolled down her cheek. But Joy wasn't the only emotionally disturbed person at the Y. Pretty much everyone who worked there had some sort of deep-seated psychological issue. Take Lance, for instance. He was a member of the administrative staff and had a coveted upstairs office. Even though he said he was straight, everyone knew he was gay. He wore sweater vests, listened to Madonna in his office, and was often seen trolling around the men's locker room during his lunch break. On his desk was a picture that had obviously been clipped from a magazine of a woman who he claimed was his fiancée. Serafina. One time, long after I quit at the Y and moved out of St. Paul entirely, I randomly bumped into him at a gay bar in West Hollywood. "Lance, hey, how's it going?" Lance froze. "My name's not Lance," he replied in a stiff, awkward voice. "It's not?" "No, my name is..." He stopped mid-sentence. I looked back at him for a moment, unsure how to navigate the situation. Then he said, "I have to go," and hurried out of the bar. Then there was Heather, the curly-haired fitness director slash health nut slash egomaniac. She powered around all day, dressed in spandex workout pants and Reebok sneakers, and lived on Luna bars and Odwalla protein shakes. "Look at my abs," she said one time, lifting her shirt to display her six-pack. "Pretty killer, huh?" Yeah, I replied. "And how about my ass?" Heather continued, turning around and flexing her butt cheeks. Then looking over her shoulder, she said with just a hint of seduction, "Isn't it tight?" To this day, I still can't decide whether I loathed the woman, pitied her, or both. The YMCA was located in the Midway, St. Paul's version of the ghetto. Directly across the street was a halfway house, and a few blocks down from that was a homeless shelter. As I biked to work each morning, I passed by drug dealers and prostitutes heading home after a hard night's work, and we'd exchange sympathetic glances with one another. Usually, mornings at the front desk were fairly quiet, but occasionally riffraff would wander in off the street. One of them was a man who identified himself as Popeye. Popeye was about 5 feet tall, homeless, and a schizophrenic. He'd loiter around the front of the building and scare members on their way in, usually by popping out from the bushes and barking sexually explicit comments at them. One time he told a yuppie guy he wanted to bend him over and give him a, quote, meat injection. Another time, he pulled out his penis and told a young mom he wanted to, quote, frost her pastries with it. Whenever he did something like this, I'd have to go outside and tell him to leave. "Popeye, what do you hope to accomplish by doing things like that?" I guy asked once after he pulled down his pants and pressed his bare ass up against the glass front doors for everyone in the lobby to see. What do you hope to accomplish by doing things like that, bitch? About 6 months after I started working at the YMCA, a position teaching a yoga class on Saturday mornings opened after the current instructor, Jonathan, apparently suffered a nervous breakdown, shaved his head, and checked into a mental hospital. Heather was desperate to find a temporary replacement, so I offered to fill in, even though I'd never done yoga before in my life. All I knew was that it involved stretching and breathing. So that's what I told my students to do. Stretch and breathe, I'd say, while leading them through a series of totally made-up yoga poses. But now, let's all bring our hands over our heads and gently shift into unicorn pose. In addition to fitness classes, such as yoga, the Y had a pool and offered water aerobics classes. The pool crowd was a weird bunch of people. Most of them were decrepit grandparent types, or active older adults, as the Y referred to them, who constantly griped about the temperature of the water, the temperature of the building, or the temperature outside. It's too cold out there, they would grumble at me on their way into the Y, as though I personally were responsible for the weather. The pool was so chlorinated that the smell permeated the entire first floor of the building. People used to complain about the water bleaching their body hair, or worse, burning their skin. On more than one occasion, I overheard the water aerobics instructors complaining in the break room about having to buy new bathing suits every 2 weeks because the water would literally eat through the fabric. One morning I was folding towels at the front desk when I heard a blood-curdling scream followed by a lifeguard's whistle echo from the pool area. Seconds later, Popeye came racing down the hall. I have no idea how he even got back there. He was being chased by the lifeguard, who waved a red rescue tube in the air. "Stop him!" she cried. "He pooped in the pool!" I'm not sure what exactly she expected me to do about it. Even if I had stopped him, then what? Before I could even register what was going on, Popeye zipped past me and out the front door. After that, the pool had to be completely drained and refilled, a process that was as lengthy as it was expensive. It was closed for 4 days, prompting the water aerobics people to collectively draft and sign a letter to corporate, expressing their discontent about the situation. Because the incident with Popeye happened on my watch, as front desk staff, it was my responsibility to keep tabs on every person who entered and exited the building. I was called into Irene's office and reprimanded. One by one, she picked the cat hairs from her corduroys, while I explained that I didn't know how Popeye had gotten into the building. And in the end, she wrote me up. Frankly, though, I couldn't have cared less. I was already planning on quitting. The previous week, I had received an acceptance letter from a film school in Los Angeles, which I had applied to earlier in the summer. 2 weeks later, as a parting gift on my last day, Irene said she'd sell me one of the YMCA sweatshirts for sale in the lobby at half price. Instead of $50, she said, you can have it for $25. I politely declined her offer, then stole one on my way up. Nearly a decade later, I still have it, and I even wear it from time to time, usually when I'm in a sour mood and need to be reminded that things could always be worse. So I guess that creepy video I watched at orientation was sort of right after all. Once you work at the YMCA, you really do carry the experience with you forever and ever.